What if you discovered your entire life was built on a lie? What if the people you trusted the most were the ones hiding the darkest secrets? This is not just my story. This is a warning. Stay with me until the end. You won't regret it. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Elite Secrets, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Amara stared at the email notification glowing on her screen, her heart pounding with a mixture of curiosity and dread. It was from an unknown sender, with a subject line that made her blood run cold. "You're not who you think you are." For a long moment, she considered deleting it. Just another spam email, she told herself, trying to calm the sudden rush of anxiety. But something deep within her, a quiet intuition she had spent years ignoring, urged her to click. With a trembling hand, she opened the message. There were no words, no explanations, only a single black and white photograph attached. It showed a woman who looked exactly like her mother, standing beside a man who was not her father. They were both smiling, their arms wrapped around each other, and the woman was holding a baby wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Amara's breath caught in her throat as she leaned closer to the screen, her eyes scanning every detail. The date stamped at the bottom of the photo was 30 years ago, 2 years before she was born. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. This couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake, a cruel joke. But the woman in the photo had the same distinct mole on her left cheek that her mother had, the same gentle smile, the same eyes that always seemed to hold a secret. Amara's world, which had always felt so stable and predictable, began to tilt on its axis, throwing everything she thought she knew into question. She read the email again, searching for any clue about the sender, but there was nothing. No return address, no signature, just the haunting image. Who sent this? Why? And what did it mean? She leaned back in her chair, her thoughts swirling like leaves in a storm. For as long as she could remember, she had felt like an outsider in her own family, the black sheep who never quite fit in. Her parents always praised her older brother, Adrian, for his achievements, his grades, his job, his perfect life, while overlooking hers. They said she was too sensitive, too dreamy, too unlike them. She had accepted it, believing she was the problem, that she just needed to try harder to be part of the family. But now this photo, it hinted at something deeper, something hidden, something that explained the constant feeling of not belonging. Amara knew she couldn't ignore this. She had to find out the truth, no matter where it led or what it cost. She quickly forwarded the email to her personal account and deleted it from her main inbox, a strange sense of fear and excitement washing over her. This was just the beginning, and she could feel that nothing would ever be the same again. The following days were filled with a restless energy that made it hard to focus on work or anything else. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped, half expecting another mysterious message. But none came. Instead, the silence felt even more unnerving, as if someone was watching and waiting. She found herself watching her parents more closely, noticing the subtle ways they interacted with her compared to Adrian. How her mother's eyes sometimes lingered on her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, a mix of sadness, fear, and something else she couldn't name. How her father always changed the subject whenever she asked about her childhood or their past, deflecting with a joke or a story about Adrian. Small things, but they added up, feeding the growing doubt in her mind. She decided to start her investigation quietly, without alerting anyone. She began with online searches, typing in her mother's name along with words like past, old friends, mystery, and even Leonardo, a name that had popped into her head after seeing the photo, though she didn't know why. But the results were frustratingly vague. Social media profiles showed only the carefully curated present, not the hidden past. She needed to dig deeper to access records or people who knew her mother before she became the woman she knew today. It was then that she remembered her Aunt Lydia, her mother's younger sister, who had always been the rebellious one in the family, the one who spoke her mind and often clashed with her parents. They hadn't spoken in years, but Amara recalled that Lydia had once mentioned something about her mother having a secret past during a heated argument at a family gathering. At the time, Amara had dismissed it as typical family drama, but now it took on new significance. She found Lydia's number after scrolling through old contacts and took a deep breath before dialing. The phone rang several times before a familiar voice answered, sounding surprised and a little wary. "Amara? Is that really you? It's been so long." Aún Lydia. "Yes, it's me. I know it's been a long time, and I'm sorry for that, but I need to ask you something important. It's about Mom." There was a pause on the other end, and when Lydia spoke again, her tone was cautious, almost guarded. "What about her? I found an old photo recently. It shows Mom with a man I don't recognize holding a baby, and I think that baby might be me. The date on the photo is from before I was born, and the man, he isn't Dad. Do you know anything about this?" The silence that followed was so long and heavy that Amara wondered if the call had dropped. Then Lydia sighed heavily, a sound filled with years of unspoken stories and buried pain. "I always wondered when this would come out. I hoped it wouldn't for your sake, but I guess some secrets can't stay hidden forever. Listen, Amara, this isn't something we should discuss over the phone. It's not safe and there's too much to explain. Can we meet in person? There are things you need to know, things that will change everything. But you have to be careful. Your parents, they've kept this buried for a reason, and it's not a good one." They agreed to meet the next day at a small, quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city, away from prying eyes and familiar faces. Amara spent the night tossing and turning, her mind racing with possibilities. What could be so terrible that her family had hidden it for decades? What was the truth about her birth? And what role did she play in this hidden history? The truth, she sensed, was closer than she thought, but it was also more dangerous than she could imagine. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump into the unknown, and there was no turning back. Amara arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, her nerves frayed and her mind racing with a mixture of fear and determination. She chose a corner table with a clear view of the entrance, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of steaming coffee she didn't actually want to drink. The aroma of roasted beans and baked pastries filled the air, but she could hardly focus on anything except the impending conversation. Every time the door opened, her heart leaped into her throat, but it was always a stranger. A couple laughing, a student with headphones, an elderly man reading a newspaper. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Aunt Lydia walked in. Her presence immediately commanded attention even in the quiet setting. She looked older than Amara remembered, with more lines around her eyes and a weariness in her posture that spoke of years of carrying heavy secrets. But her gaze was as sharp and perceptive as ever, scanning the room quickly before settling on Amara. She made her way over, sliding into the seat opposite her without a word. For a long moment they just looked at each other, the silence heavy with unspoken history and the weight of what was about to be revealed. Then Lydia leaned forward, her voice low and urgent, almost a whisper. "I'm glad you reached out, Amara. Truly I am. But before I say anything, you need to understand something. What I'm about to tell you isn't just a family secret. It's dangerous. Could put both of us in real danger. Your parents, especially your father, they've built their lives on a foundation of lies, and they will do anything to protect it. Anything." Amara felt a chill run down her spine, but she nodded, her determination hardening. She had come too far to back down now. "I need to know the truth, Aunt Lydia. However bad it is, I deserve to know. I've spent my whole life feeling like I didn't belong, like there was something wrong with me. If this explains even a part of that, I have to hear it." Lydia took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room once more as if expecting someone to be listening. "The man in the photo, his name was Leonardo Russo. He was your biological father." The words hung in the air between them, stark and undeniable. Amara felt the world shift beneath her feet, but she forced herself to stay calm, to breathe, to listen. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the answer to questions she had never dared to ask out loud. "Your mother met him when she was in college," Lydia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. as if afraid the walls themselves might hear. They were deeply in love, and they planned to get married. He was everything she ever wanted: kind, idealistic, passionate about justice. He made her laugh, he supported her dreams, he saw the best in her. And then she found out she was pregnant with you. Leonardo was overjoyed. He started talking about names, about painting the nursery, about reading stories to you every night. He was a good man, Amara. One of the best I've ever known. She paused, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But then things started to go wrong. Leonardo was working as an investigative journalist, and he was digging into some very powerful people, specifically the executives at NextCorp, including the man you know as your father. Amara's blood ran cold. What? Dad was involved with NextCorp back then. He wasn't just involved, he was one of the rising stars being groomed for leadership. He knew Leonardo was getting close to exposing something huge: illegal dumping, corruption, cover-ups that went all the way to the top. So he made your mother an offer. Marry him, raise you as his own, and he would make sure Leonardo disappeared quietly. He promised to provide for all of you, to give you a stable life, to keep you safe. But if she refused, he threatened to ruin Leonardo's career, to destroy your family's reputation, to make sure you never had a normal life. He said he had the power to make Leonardo vanish without a trace, and no one would ever question it. Lydia's voice broke, and she looked down at her hands, which were trembling slightly. Your mother was terrified. She was young, pregnant, and alone. Her own parents had cut her off when she refused to leave Leonardo. She thought she was protecting you by agreeing. She thought she was choosing the lesser of two evils. But after they married, Leonardo vanished. Officially, it was ruled a disappearance. He was last seen leaving his apartment one night and never showed up for work the next day. But we all knew what really happened. Your mother fell into a deep depression after that. She never talked about him again. She threw herself into being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, but I could always see the guilt in her eyes, especially when she looked at you. You have his eyes, you know. Leonardo's eyes. Amara felt like she couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin around her, the sounds of the cafe fading into a distant hum. All those years of feeling like an outsider, of wondering why her father always seemed distant, why her mother looked at her with such sadness and guilt, it all made sense now. She was living a life built on a lie, a cover-up, maybe even a murder. Her entire identity had been shaped by a secret she never knew. Why are you telling me this now? She whispered, her throat tight with emotion. Why didn't anyone tell me before? Because we were all afraid, Lydia said softly. Your father is a powerful man, Amara. He has connections everywhere. He could ruin lives with a single phone call. I wanted to tell you so many times, especially when I saw how much you were struggling, but I was scared. And your mother, she made me promise never to say anything. She thought ignorance would protect you. But now I think someone else wants you to know. That email you received, it wasn't from me. Someone else is digging into this, and they're using you to bring it all to light. You need to be careful, Amara. If your father finds out you're asking questions, he won't hesitate to silence you too. He's already done it once. As if on cue, Amara's phone buzzed. Another email from the same unknown sender. This time it contained a scanned document, a birth certificate, her birth certificate. But the father's name wasn't the man she knew as Dad. It was Leonardo Russo. And at the bottom, a handwritten note. They lied to you. Now it's your turn to uncover the truth. But be careful, you're being watched. Amara showed it to Lydia, whose face paled. This is bad. This is very bad. You need to disappear for a while, Amara. Go somewhere safe where they can't find you. Change your phone number, stay off social media. Don't tell anyone where you are. But Amara shook her head, a newfound strength rising within her. No, I'm not running away. I'm not going to live in fear like my mother did. I'm going to find out what really happened to Leonardo, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. He deserved better than to be forgotten. He deserved to have his story told. Lydia looked at her with a mixture of pride and fear. Then you're going to need help. And I know just the person. She scribbled a name and number on a napkin and slid it across the table. His name is Inspector Murphy. He's a retired detective who worked on Leonardo's case years ago. He always suspected foul play, but he could never prove it. He was forced into early retirement because he wouldn't drop the case. He might be willing to help you now. Amara took the napkin, her fingers trembling but her resolve steady. She knew her life was about to change forever. She was no longer just Amara, the daughter who never fit in. She was Amara Russo, the daughter of a man who died for the truth, and she would honor his memory by finishing what he started. She left the cafe with a new purpose, her mind already racing with plans and possibilities. But as she stepped out into the sunlight, she didn't notice the man in a black car parked across the street, watching her through binoculars, already reporting her movements to someone who wanted the past to stay buried forever. Amara clutched the napkin with Inspector Murphy's number tightly in her hand as she walked away from the cafe, her mind swirling with the overwhelming truth Aunt Lydia had just revealed. Each step felt heavier, as if the weight of decades of lies was physically pressing down on her. She couldn't shake the image of her biological father, Leonardo, a man she had never known but whose blood ran through her veins. A man who had been erased from history simply because he dared to seek justice. As she reached her car, she quickly dialed the number on the napkin, her fingers trembling slightly. The phone rang several times before a gruff, weary voice answered. Murphy here. Amara took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. Inspector Murphy? My name is Amara. I'm Leonardo Russo's daughter. There was a long pause on the other end, and for a moment she thought he might hang up. But then he spoke, his tone softer now, filled with a mix of surprise and sadness. Leonardo's daughter? I didn't know he had a daughter. How can I help you? Amara explained everything, the mysterious email, the photo, the conversation with Lydia, the birth certificate. She told him about her growing fear that her father, the man who had raised her, might have been involved in Leonardo's disappearance. Murphy listened intently, without interruption. When she finished, he sighed heavily. I always knew there was more to that case. Your father, the man you call your father, he was always a person of interest, but we never had enough evidence to bring him in. He was too powerful, too connected. And every time we got close to a breakthrough, witnesses would disappear or evidence would vanish. He agreed to meet her the next day at his home, a small, modest house on the outskirts of the city. That night, Amara barely slept. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory of her childhood, searching for clues she might have missed. The way her father always seemed uncomfortable when she asked about her past. The way her mother would quickly change the subject whenever family history came up. The locked drawer in her father's desk that she was never allowed to open. It all made sense now. Early the next morning, she drove to Inspector Murphy's house. He was an elderly man with a kind face and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. His home was filled with books and files, a testament to a lifetime dedicated to justice. He welcomed her in and offered her a seat at his kitchen table. I've kept copies of all the files from your father's case, he said, pulling out a thick folder from a cabinet. I never gave up on it, even after I was forced to retire. Leonardo was a good man. He didn't deserve what happened to him. They spent hours going through the files, old photographs, witness statements, newspaper clippings. Murphy pointed out inconsistencies in the official story, details that had been overlooked or deliberately ignored. He showed her a photo of Leonardo, and Amara felt a strange connection to the man in the image. He had her eyes, her smile. She could see herself in him. There was one witness, Murphy said, lowering his voice. A man named Carlos Mendez. He was a security guard at NextCorp the night Leonardo disappeared. He claimed he saw two men forcing Leonardo into a car outside his apartment. He was willing to testify, but the day before he was scheduled to give his statement, he had an accident, fell down the stairs at his home and broke his neck. The case was ruled an accident, but I always suspected foul play. Amara's blood ran cold. Do you think he's still alive? Could we find him? Murphy shook his head. He's dead. But he had a daughter.
Elena Mendez.
She might know something. She was just a teenager at the time, but she was very close to her father. She might have kept his notes or remembered something he told her. He dug through his files and found an old address for Elena. Be careful, though. If your father finds out you're digging into this, he won't hesitate to silence you too. Amara left Murphy's house with a new sense of purpose. She drove to the address he had given her, an apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. She knocked on the door, and after a moment, a woman in her late 40s answered. She looked tired but kind.
Elena Mendez.
Amara asked. The woman nodded, her eyes cautious. Yes? Can I help you? Amara introduced herself and explained why she was there. Elena's expression softened. My father talked about your dad often. He said he was a brave man who stood up for what was right. He always felt guilty that he couldn't save him. She invited Amara inside and showed her a box of her father's old belongings. Notes, photos, and a diary he had kept. In it, he had written about the night Leonardo disappeared. He described the car, the two men, and even part of the license plate number. But the most shocking entry was this. I recognized one of the men. He's a high-up at NextCorp. If I speak up, I'm a dead man. Amara's hands trembled as she read the words. This was the proof she needed. But as she was about to leave, her phone buzzed. Another email from the unknown sender. This time it was a video, a short, grainy clip showing her father, the man who had raised her, talking to two men in a dark alley. The audio was muffled, but she could make out a few words. Take care of Russo. Permanently. Then a gunshot. The video ended abruptly. Amara felt sick. This was it, irrefutable proof that her father was involved in Leonardo's murder. But before she could process it, her phone rang. It was her mother. Her voice was panicked, almost hysterical. Amara, where are you? Your father, he knows everything. He's on his way to find you. You need to run. Now. Amara's heart pounded. She thanked Elena quickly and rushed to her car. But as she pulled out of the parking lot, she saw a black SUV following her. She tried to lose it, weaving through side streets, but it stayed right behind her. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging or you'll end up like your real father. She knew she was running out of time. She needed to get to safety, but where could she go? Who could she trust? As she sped down the highway, she realized there was only one person left who might help her, her brother Adrian. But would he believe her? Or would he side with their father? She dialed his number, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. Adrian? I need your help. It's about Dad. Everything we know about our family. It's a lie. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Adrian spoke, his voice cold and distant. I know. I've always known. And if you know what's good for you, you'll stop now before you get hurt. The line went dead. Amara felt a wave of betrayal so intense it took her breath away. Her own brother, the person she had grown up with, looked up to, had known the truth all along and had chosen to side with their father. She was completely alone. But as she looked in the rearview mirror at the SUV still tailing her, she knew she couldn't give up. She had to see this through for Leonardo, for herself, for everyone who had been silenced. She pressed down on the accelerator, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs as she swerved through traffic, the black SUV clinging to her tail like a predator. The city blurred past her windows, a chaotic mix of light and motion, but her focus remained locked on the rearview mirror. She had never felt so alone, so betrayed. Adrian's cold dismissal echoed in her mind, a sharp pain that cut deeper than fear. Her own brother had chosen their father's lies over the truth, over her. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white. She needed a plan, and she needed it now. She couldn't go home. She couldn't go to any friends. Her father's reach was too far, his resources too vast. Then she remembered Inspector Murphy. He had warned her to be careful. but he was the only one who understood the danger she was in. She fumbled for her phone, hands trembling, and dialed his number. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice urgent. "Amara? What's wrong?" "They're following me," she breathed, her eyes darting to the mirror. "A black SUV. My father knows everything." "Adrian, he knew too. He told me to stop." Murphy's tone turned grim. "Listen to me carefully. Drive to the old industrial district, the warehouses near the river. There's an abandoned factory called Redstone Mills. It's easy to get lost in there. I'll meet you. And Amara, don't use your phone again. They might be tracking it." She ended the call and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, her mind racing. Redstone Mills. She remembered it from a school trip years ago. A sprawling, decaying complex of buildings that had once been the heart of the city's industry. Now it was a ghost town, a maze of rust and shadows, perfect for disappearing. She took a sudden turn onto a narrow side street, then another, pushing the car faster than she should through the tight spaces. The SUV followed, relentless. But she knew these streets. She had explored them as a teenager, seeking escape from the suffocating perfection of her family. She cut through an alley, emerged onto a busy main road, then ducked into another alley. For a moment, she lost sight of the SUV. She seized the opportunity, slamming her foot on the accelerator and shooting out onto a deserted road that led toward the river. The industrial district rose ahead, a silhouette of crumbling chimneys and broken windows against the evening sky. She parked behind a stack of shipping containers, killed the engine, and slipped out of the car, moving quickly into the shadows of the nearest building. The air was thick with the smell of rust and damp concrete. She could hear the distant sound of traffic, the whisper of the wind through broken glass, and her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. She waited, pressed against a cold brick wall, watching for any sign of the SUV. Minutes passed. Then a figure emerged from the darkness, Inspector Murphy, moving with a cautious grace that belied his age. He gestured for her to follow him into the factory. Inside, it was even darker, the only light filtering through cracks in the roof. They moved through vast rooms filled with forgotten machinery, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Murphy led her to a small office tucked away in a corner, where a single lantern cast a warm glow. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low. "Your father's men will search here eventually. We need to get you somewhere safe." But Amara shook her head. "I'm not running anymore. I have proof now, the video, the diary from Carlos Mendez's daughter. I need to take this public. I need to expose him." Murphy studied her face, his eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and worry. "You're brave just like your father. But you can't do this alone. Your father controls the media, the police, even some judges. If you try to go public without a solid plan, he'll destroy the evidence and silence you forever." He paused, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, encrypted USB drive. "I've spent years collecting evidence against NextCorp and your father. Witness statements, financial records, leaked documents, everything you need to bring him down. But it's not enough on its own. We need someone with influence, someone your father can't intimidate." Amara took the USB drive, feeling the weight of it in her hand. "Who?" "Senator Eleanor Williams," Murphy said. "She's been trying to pass legislation against corporate corruption for years. She's one of the few people your father hasn't been able to buy. If we can get this evidence to her, she can launch a formal investigation." Hope flickered in Amara's chest for the first time since this nightmare began. "How do we reach her?" "She's holding a public rally tomorrow at City Hall. It's our best chance. But getting to her won't be easy. Your father will have his people everywhere." They spent the next hour crafting a plan. Amara would disguise herself, a hoodie, sunglasses, a change of appearance, and blend into the crowd at the rally. Murphy would create a distraction to draw attention away while she made her way to the stage. It was risky, but it was their only shot. As they finalized the details, a noise echoed through the factory, the sound of a door creaking open somewhere in the distance. They froze listening. Footsteps. Multiple pairs moving quickly. "They're here," Murphy whispered. "We need to go. Now." He led her through a back exit into a narrow alley, but as they emerged, headlights flooded the space. The black SUV was there, blocking their way. Two men stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, with cold, professional eyes. One of them smiled, a thin, cruel curve of his lips. "Mr. Murphy, Miss Amara, your father would like a word." Amara's mind raced. There was no escape, but then she remembered the USB drive in her pocket. She couldn't let them get it. As the men advanced, she quickly slipped the drive into a crack in the wall beside her, hoping it would go unnoticed. Murphy stepped in front of her, his voice steady. "You don't have to do this. Let her go." The men ignored him, reaching for Amara. But before they could touch her, a new voice cut through the tension. "Step away from them." Everyone turned. Standing at the end of the alley was a woman, tall, elegant, with sharp eyes and an air of authority. Senator Eleanor Williams. Behind her stood two armed security guards. "I received an interesting tip about a meeting here," she said, her gaze fixed on the men. "I suggest you leave before this becomes official business." The men hesitated, then backed away, melting into the shadows. The SUV drove off, its tires screeching against the pavement. Amara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Senator Williams approached them, her expression serious. "Inspector Murphy, Miss Russo, I believe we have much to discuss." She led them to a waiting car, and as they drove away from the factory, Amara felt a glimmer of hope. She had found an ally. But as she looked out the window, she saw a figure watching from a distance. A man with a camera, his lens focused on them. Her father's reach was longer than she had imagined. The game was far from over. Senator Williams' car was a haven of quiet luxury, a stark contrast to the crumbling danger they had just escaped. Amara sat beside Inspector Murphy, her body still trembling with adrenaline, as the city lights streaked past the tinted windows. The senator studied her with a keen, assessing gaze. But there was kindness in her eyes too, a willingness to listen that Amara hadn't encountered in anyone else. "Start from the beginning," Senator Williams said gently. "Tell me everything." And so Amara did. She spoke of the mysterious email, the photograph, the birth certificate, her conversation with Aunt Lydia, the files from Inspector Murphy, the diary of Carlos Mendez, and the chilling video implicating her father. She held nothing back, her voice steadying as she unburdened herself of the truth she had carried alone for too long. The senator listened without interruption, her expression growing graver with each revelation. When Amara finished, there was a long silence. Then Senator Williams leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly. "What you're describing, it's not just a family secret. It's a web of corruption, abuse of power, and possibly murder. And your father is at the center of it." She turned to Murphy. "Inspector, you've been investigating this for years. Why now? Why come forward now?" Murphy's voice was weary but determined. "Because for the first time we have proof that can't be easily dismissed. Because Amara is brave enough to fight. And because I'm tired of watching powerful men escape justice." The senator nodded slowly. "I've been trying to expose NextCorp's illegal practices for years, but every time I get close, evidence disappears, witnesses vanish, and pressure is applied from the highest levels. Your father has friends in every corner of this city. Judges, politicians, media executives. Taking him down won't be easy. It will be dangerous. Are you prepared for that, Amara?" Amara met her gaze without flinching. "I've spent my whole life living a lie. I'm not afraid of the truth anymore." A small smile touched the senator's lips. "Good. Then here's what we're going to do." She outlined a plan, a careful, coordinated effort to bring the evidence to light. She would use her position to convene a special hearing, summoning key witnesses and presenting the evidence in a way that couldn't be ignored. But they needed to move quickly, before Amara's father could react. "First, we need to secure the evidence you mentioned, the USB drive, the diary, the video. Where are they? Amara's heart sank. The USB drive. I hid it in a crack in the wall near the factory. But the diary? I left it at Elena Mendez's apartment. And the video is on my phone, which I tossed in my car. Senator Williams didn't hesitate. We'll send a trusted team to retrieve the USB drive. Inspector Murphy, you'll accompany them. Amara, you'll come with me to Elena's apartment. We need to get that diary before your father's men do. They dropped Murphy off at a secure location where he could coordinate with the senator's team, then drove toward Elena's neighborhood. The streets were quieter now, the late hour casting long shadows. Amara's mind raced with anxiety. What if they were too late? What if her father's men had already gotten to Elena? As they turned onto Elena's street, Amara's fears were realized. 2 black sedans were parked outside her apartment building, and men in dark suits were speaking with the building superintendent. They're here, Amara whispered, her throat tight. Senator Williams' jaw tightened. We can't risk going in now, but we can't let them get that diary either. She picked up her phone and made a quick call, speaking in low, urgent tones. Minutes later, a delivery van pulled up near the sedans, and a woman in a uniform stepped out with a large package, drawing the men's attention. In the confusion, Senator Williams handed Amara a small earpiece. Stay on the line. My assistant will guide you. There's a fire escape around the back. Use it to get to Elena's window. Get the diary and get out. Don't be seen. Amara's heart pounded, but she nodded, slipping out of the car and into the alley beside the building. She found the fire escape, its metal groaning under her weight as she climbed. Elena's apartment was on the 3rd floor. The window was unlocked. A small mercy. She slipped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The apartment was in disarray. Drawers pulled out, cushions slashed, papers scattered everywhere. Her father's men had already been here. Her stomach clenched. Was Elena okay? She moved quickly to the bedroom, where Elena had shown her the diary. The box was gone. Despair washed over her. But then she remembered, Elena had mentioned keeping a digital copy on a hidden drive just in case. Where would she hide it? Amara thought back to their conversation. Elena had said, "My father taught me to always have a backup. He said the truth is too important to lose." And then she had tapped a small loose floorboard near her bookshelf. Amara rushed to the bookshelf, her fingers searching until she found the board. It lifted easily, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a USB drive. She grabbed it, relief flooding through her. But as she turned to leave, she heard voices in the hallway, men speaking in low, harsh tones. They were coming back. She froze, her mind racing. The window was her only way out, but they would see her. Then she remembered the fire escape continued to the roof. She climbed out quickly, pulling the window closed behind her, and scrambled upward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. From the roof, she could see the street below. The men were entering the building again. She had to get back to the senator's car. She found a service ladder on the other side of the roof and climbed down, dropping into a deserted alley. She ran, the USB drive clutched tightly in her hand, until she reached the car. Senator Williams was waiting, her face tense with worry. "Did you get it?" Amara held up the drive. "Yes, but they tore the apartment apart. I hope Elena is safe." The senator's expression darkened. "We'll make sure she is. Now let's get you somewhere secure." They drove to a safe house, a modest, unassuming apartment in a part of the city Amara had never visited. Murphy was already there, along with the USB drive from the factory. He had also managed to retrieve Amara's phone from her car. "Your father's men were watching your vehicle, but we created a diversion," he explained. "We're lucky we got to it in time." For the first time in days, Amara felt a glimmer of hope. They had the evidence. They had a plan. But as she plugged the drives into a secure laptop, preparing to review everything with Murphy and the senator, her phone buzzed. A new message from the unknown sender. This time it was a photo. A picture of her mother tied to a chair, her eyes wide with fear. The message read, Stop now or she pays the price. Amara's blood ran cold. Her father had crossed a line he could never come back from. He wasn't just a liar, he was a monster. And she would stop at nothing to bring him down. The image of her mother, terrified, bound, and helpless, burned itself into Amara's mind. For a moment, the world narrowed to that single horrifying picture, and she felt a surge of pure, undiluted rage. Her father had sunk to depths she hadn't thought possible. This was no longer about secrets or corruption. It was about saving her mother's life. Senator Williams and Inspector Murphy saw the change in her expression and hurried over. When they saw the photo, Murphy's face hardened, and the senator let out a sharp breath. "This changes everything," Murphy said, his voice low and urgent. "We can't proceed with the hearing if your mother's life is in danger. He's using her as a shield." Senator Williams placed a steadying hand on Amara's shoulder. "We will get her back, but we have to be smart. If we rush in, we risk getting her killed." Amara's hands were shaking, but her voice was firm. "What does he want? He must have sent a demand." As if on cue, her phone buzzed again. A new message. "Bring all the evidence to the next Corp headquarters rooftop. Alone. Come in 1 hour, or you'll never see her again." The next Corp building, her father's fortress, the symbol of his power. Going there alone was a trap. She knew it. But what choice did she have? Murphy shook his head. "You can't go alone. It's suicide. He'll take the evidence and kill both of you." "I have to," Amara said, her eyes fixed on her mother's terrified face. "I can't let her die because of me." Senator Williams studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we'll make sure you're not alone. We'll turn his trap into ours." She quickly outlined a new plan. Amara would go to the rooftop as demanded, but she wouldn't bring the real evidence. Instead, she'd carry decoy USB drives. Meanwhile, Murphy and the senator's security team would surround the building, ready to move in the moment they had confirmation that her mother was safe. "We'll have snipers positioned on nearby buildings," the senator explained, "and I'll have a team ready to breach the rooftop. But you'll need to stall him. Keep him talking until we're in position." Amara's heart was pounding, but she agreed. They spent the next hour preparing. She dressed in a wire so they could hear everything. She practiced what she would say, how she would act. She tried to steady her nerves, but the fear for her mother was a constant, gnawing presence. Finally, it was time. Senator Williams drove her to within a few blocks of the next court building, then squeezed her hand. "You can do this, Amara. You're stronger than you know." Amara stepped out of the car and walked toward the skyscraper that had loomed over her life in ways she'd never understood. The lobby was eerily quiet, the usual bustle of employees replaced by a hollow silence. Security guards eyed her but didn't stop her. She was expected. She took the private elevator to the rooftop, her stomach twisting with each passing floor. The doors opened to a cold, windy night. The city spread out below her, a tapestry of lights and shadows. And there, in the center of the rooftop, stood her father. He looked exactly as he always did, impeccably dressed, calm, controlled. But his eyes were cold and empty, devoid of the warmth he'd sometimes shown her in the past. Beside him, tied to a chair, was her mother. Her eyes met Amara's, filled with tears and a silent apology. "Amara," her father said, his voice smooth and unnervingly calm, "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable." She stepped forward, holding up the decoy USB drives. "I have what you want. Now let her go." He smiled, a thin, predatory expression. "First, give me the drives." She hesitated, playing her part. "How do I know you'll let her go?" "You don't," he said simply. "But you have no choice." He took a step toward her, but she held her ground. "Why, Dad? Why all of this? Why lie to me my whole life? Why kill an innocent man?" His smile faded, replaced by a mask of impatience. Leonardo Russo was not innocent. He was a fool who thought he could change the world by exposing truths no one wanted to hear. He threatened everything I built, everything our family has. Our family. Amara's voice broke. You're not my family. You're my kidnapper. My mother's jailer. A murderer. For a moment, his calm facade cracked, and she saw the rage beneath. I gave you everything. A home, a name, a life of privilege. And this is how you repay me. By siding with a dead man over the father who raised you. You didn't raise me. You bought me. You stole me. And you killed my real father. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and final. His eyes narrowed. Give me the drives, Amara. Now. She took a step back, clutching the decoys tighter. Not until you untie my mother. He sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child, and nodded to one of his men, who began untying her mother's ropes. As soon as she was free, she ran to Amara, hugging her tightly. I'm so sorry, Amara. I'm so sorry for everything. It was then that Amara noticed the small device in her mother's hand, a panic button. Her mother pressed it, and suddenly the rooftop was flooded with light. Helicopters appeared overhead, their spotlights illuminating the scene. Voices echoed through megaphones. This is the FBI. Drop your weapons and put your hands in the air. Her father's men froze, caught off guard. But her father himself remained eerily calm. He looked at Amara, and for the first time, she saw something like regret in his eyes. You should have let it go, Amara. You should have chosen us. Then, before anyone could react, he turned and ran toward the edge of the rooftop. For a heart-stopping moment, Amara thought he would jump, but instead he pressed a hidden button on the parapet, and a secret door slid open. An escape route only he knew about. He disappeared inside, the door closing behind him just as FBI agents swarmed the rooftop. Amara stood there, holding her trembling mother, as chaos erupted around them. They had stopped his men. They had saved her mother. But he had escaped. And Amara knew with a cold certainty that this wasn't over. Not yet. The rooftop was a scene of controlled chaos. FBI agents secured her father's men, their hands cuffed behind their backs, while paramedics checked on Amara and her mother. The cold wind whipped around them, but Amara felt numb, her mind still reeling from her father's escape. He was gone, vanished into the labyrinth of his own building, a place designed to protect secrets and those who kept them. Senator Williams approached, her expression a mix of relief and frustration. We have the building surrounded, but he knows every exit, every hidden passage. It might take time to find him. Amara shook her head, a sudden clarity cutting through her exhaustion. He won't hide. He'll go to his private office, the one on the top floor. He always said it was the only place where he could truly think. Inspector Murphy, who had joined them on the rooftop, nodded grimly. He's arrogant enough to believe he can still talk his way out of this. With a team of FBI agents, they descended to the top floor. The hallway outside her father's office was silent, the plush carpet muffling their footsteps. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was exactly as Amara remembered, a space of cold elegance, all glass and steel, with a panoramic view of the city he had controlled for so long. Her father stood by the window, his back to them, as if admiring the view one last time. He turned slowly, his face calm but his eyes weary. I suppose you're here to arrest me. It's over, Dad, Amara said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. You have nowhere left to run. He smiled faintly. You always were too much like him. Leonardo, he never knew when to quit either. For the first time, he spoke of Leonardo not with anger, but with a strange respect. He was a worthy opponent, but in the end, he underestimated what people like me are willing to do to protect our legacy. You mean your corruption? Your lies. Amara's voice trembled with anger. I mean our family's future, he snapped, the calm breaking. Everything I did for this family. For you. For Adrian. So that you would never want for anything. So that you would always be safe. Safe. Amara laughed bitterly. You killed my father. You lied to me every day of my life. You threatened Mom, you manipulated Adrian. What part of that is keeping us safe? He looked at her mother, who stood silently by the door, tears streaming down her face. "I loved you," he said to her, his voice softening. "I still do. I never meant for any of this to hurt you." "You loved your power more," her mother whispered. "You loved control." The FBI agents moved forward to cuff him, but he raised a hand. "There's something you should see first." He pressed a hidden button under his desk, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a small, secure room. Inside were files, dozens of them, not just on Leonardo but on other journalists, activists, anyone who had ever threatened NextCorp. And among them, a file with Amara's name on it. He handed it to her. "I started this the day you turned 18. I knew you would eventually ask questions. I wanted to be prepared." Amara opened the file. Inside were photos of her, at college, at work, with friends, and detailed notes on her movements, her relationships, her strengths and weaknesses. But most chillingly, there was a contingency plan. If she ever discovered the truth, she was to be discredited, declared mentally unstable, and committed to a facility where she could never speak out. She looked up at him, horrified. "You were going to do this to me? Your own daughter. You stopped being my daughter the moment you chose him over me," he said coldly. As the agents led him away, Amara felt no triumph, only a deep, aching sadness. The man who had raised her was a monster, but he was also the only father she had ever known. The aftermath was a whirlwind. With the evidence from his secret room, the case against him was airtight. He was charged with murder, corruption, kidnapping, and countless other crimes. NextCorp was dismantled, its assets seized, its executives arrested. The truth finally came out, not just about Leonardo, but about all the lives her father had ruined. In the weeks that followed, Amara and her mother began the painful process of healing. They talked for hours, unpacking years of lies and guilt. Her mother explained how trapped she had felt, how fear had kept her silent. "I wanted to tell you so many times," she said, crying, "but I was afraid you would hate me." "I could never hate you," Amara replied, holding her tight. "You were a victim too." Adrian, however, struggled to accept the truth. He refused to speak to Amara at first, blaming her for destroying their family. But slowly, with time, he began to see the manipulation he had been under. He reached out to her, and they started rebuilding their relationship, one honest conversation at a time. Amara also connected with Leonardo's family, her grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. They welcomed her with open arms, sharing stories about the man she had never known but whose legacy she now carried. She visited his grave, placing flowers on it and promising to live a life that would make him proud. With Senator Williams' help, she established the Leonardo Russo Foundation, dedicated to supporting investigative journalism and protecting whistleblowers. She became an advocate for truth and transparency, using her own story to inspire others to speak out against corruption. 1 year later, Amara stood on a stage at a charity event, addressing a crowd of supporters. She spoke of her journey, the pain, the betrayal, but also the hope and healing. "The truth may hurt," she said, "but it also sets you free. And in the end, it's the only thing that can truly change the world." After her speech, a young woman approached her, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "Your story gave me the courage to leave an abusive situation. You showed me that it's never too late to choose truth over fear." As Amara hugged her, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known was possible. She had lost one family, but she had gained another, one built not on lies but on love and honesty. She had chosen herself, and in doing so, she had found herself. The weight of the past was finally lifting, and for the first time, the future felt bright. She looked out at the audience, at the faces of people who had been inspired by her story, and she knew that Leonardo's death had not been in vain. His truth had lived on in her, and now it would live on in others. And that was a legacy worth fighting for.